Welcome to the world of horror and nightmares. Tonight's story will drag you deep into the legend of one of the internet's darkest myths, Jeff the Killer, the boy who became a monster and whose last words are the final thing his victims ever hear. Go to sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another terrifying tale that keeps you awake at night. Now, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and let's begin. When the Woods family first arrived at their new home, it felt like a fresh start. The neighborhood was quiet, the lawns manicured, the houses lined up neatly like teeth in a perfect smile. Margaret Woods insisted the move was necessary after her husband Peter's promotion. Their two sons, Jeff and Lou, weren't thrilled, but they hid their complaints under forced smiles. The house itself seemed ordinary, 4 bedrooms, a basement, a fenced backyard. Yet from the very first night, Jeff felt uneasy. The shadows stretched too long across the walls, the silence pressed too hard against his ears, and sometimes he swore he saw movement in the corners of his eyes. But when he mentioned it to Lou, his younger brother only laughed. "You're just paranoid, Jeff. It's a new place. Everything feels weird at first." Jeff tried to agree, but the unease remained. A week later, the Woods family received their first invitation. Their neighbor Barbara had stopped by, smiling too wide, and invited them to her son Billy's birthday party. Margaret accepted before Jeff could protest. At the party, Jeff felt the same strange discomfort he'd felt in the house. While the children played, he wandered toward the edge of the yard. That's when he saw them, 3 boys older than him, standing by the fence. One of them, tall and gaunt, held a pocket knife, twirling it casually. "New kids, huh?" the leader sneered. "There's a fee for living around here." Lou stepped forward, fists clenched, but Jeff pushed him back. Something inside Jeff was boiling, a strange heat in his chest, like fire begging to escape. His vision tunneled, his ears rang. The boys kept taunting, their laughter sharp as broken glass. Then suddenly Jeff snapped. He lunged at the leader, knocking the knife away. His fist moved faster than he thought possible, punch after punch, until the boy's nose cracked and blood spattered the grass. The other 2 rushed him, but Jeff didn't stop. He swung wildly, savoring the sound of fists hitting flesh, the rush of power, the intoxicating thrill. When it was over, the bullies lay groaning on the ground. Jeff stood there, chest heaving, blood smeared across his knuckles. Lou grabbed his arm, eyes wide with shock. "Jeff, what the hell was that?" But Jeff couldn't answer, because deep down he had liked it. From that day forward, Jeff wasn't the same. At school, he felt restless. Every insult, every shove in the hallway, every careless laugh grated against his nerves like knives. At night, he couldn't sleep. His skin burned, his heart raced, and he found himself grinning at nothing in the mirror. Then came the attack. The bullies hadn't forgotten. They ambushed Jeff and Liu on their way home, carrying bottles of alcohol and matches. Jeff fought back, but this time they had the upper hand. A bottle shattered against his face, liquid burning his skin. The world exploded into flames as fire kissed his flesh. Jeff woke up days later in the hospital. His reflection was unrecognizable, skin pale as ash, hair singed black, lips twisted in a half-smile. His eyelids were swollen, his eyes bloodshot. But beneath the pain, he felt something else, something dark, something hungry. The doctors said his behavior was due to the trauma, but Jeff knew better. This wasn't trauma. This was rebirth. When Jeff returned home, he couldn't stop staring at himself in the mirror. The pale skin, the twisted smile. It wasn't enough. He needed to finish it. So that night, while the house slept, Jeff found a knife in the kitchen. He stood before the bathroom mirror and dragged the blade across his cheeks, carving a smile so wide it nearly reached his ears. Blood ran down his chin, but he didn't feel pain, only ecstasy. Then with shaking hands, he lit a candle and held it close to his eyelids. The searing agony was unbearable, but he forced himself to continue until the flesh curled and shrank. His eyes stayed open, forever staring. When it was done, Jeff looked at his reflection and laughed. A terrible, broken laugh that echoed through the empty halls. Now, he thought, he was perfect. The house was silent when Jeff crept into his parents' bedroom. Knife in hand, his permanent smile stretching unnaturally in the moonlight. He whispered, "Go to sleep." The blade sank into his father's chest before Peter could even open his eyes. Margaret screamed, but Jeff silenced her with another slash. The sheets turned crimson, the air heavy with the metallic scent of blood. Finally, he turned to Lou's room. His brother stirred, confused. "Jeff, what's going on?" Jeff's grin widened. He raised the knife. "I'll make you smile too." Lou screamed as the blade came down. The moment Jeff raised his knife above Lou, something unexpected happened. Lou, driven by sheer terror, managed to shove his brother aside and scramble toward the window. His screams filled the night, echoing through the neighborhood. Lights flicked on in nearby houses, voices shouted, and sirens wailed in the distance. Jeff froze for a moment, his knife dripping with his parents' blood. Then almost mechanically he laughed. It wasn't fear that held him still, it was amusement. He knew the police would come, and he welcomed it. When the first cruiser pulled into the driveway, Jeff slipped out the back door, his pale skin glowing under the moonlight. The officers found only a massacre inside. By the time they realized the boy responsible had fled, Jeff was already running into the woods, barefoot, knife in hand, and grin carved into his face. News spread quickly. A disfigured boy had murdered his parents and vanished into the night. Search teams combed the forest, helicopters scanned the area, and neighbors locked their doors. But Jeff was clever. He moved like a shadow, sleeping in abandoned sheds, feeding on scraps, and watching from the tree line as people whispered his name in terror. For Jeff, hunger wasn't for food, it was for fear. He discovered that nothing thrilled him more than slipping silently into a house, standing over a sleeping victim, and whispering his chilling mantra, "Go to sleep." Some victims woke just in time to see the pale smile before the knife silenced them. Others never stirred at all. Soon entire streets in the town lived in dread. Parents stayed awake at night, clutching weapons. Children cried themselves asleep, afraid of the figure that might be lurking outside their window. Every small town has ghost stories, but Jeff was no ghost. He was flesh and blood. Though his appearance was so unnatural, people doubted he was even human anymore. His pale skin, black hair, and twisted grin made him look like a nightmare wearing a human mask. Rumors spread. Some claimed Jeff's skin was white because he had no blood left in his body. Others whispered he couldn't die, that bullets passed right through him. A few said he was the devil's child, born to drag people into the dark. Each new story made Jeff laugh. Fear was his nourishment, and the more people believed, the stronger he felt. One night, Jeff stumbled upon a lonely farmhouse at the edge of the county. The family inside was unsuspecting. A father, mother, and 2 children. Jeff watched them through the window as they ate dinner, their laughter mingling with the warm glow of the kitchen light. It disgusted him. Happiness, normalcy, everything that had been stolen from him. That night, while the family slept, Jeff slipped inside. He crept first into the parents' room. The father stirred, eyes widening in horror at the pale grin hovering above him. Jeff silenced him quickly, then moved to the mother. Her final scream never left her throat. The children awoke to the sound of dripping blood. As Jeff leaned over their beds, knife in hand, he whispered, "Don't be afraid. I'll make you beautiful, just like me." The farmhouse stood silent the next morning, its windows dark, its door ajar. Neighbors who investigated later found nothing but crimson stains and claw-like scratches on the walls, as if someone had tried to escape but never made it out. The police insisted Jeff was still alive, but as the months passed, no one could catch him. Sightings came from distant towns, each with the same description. A pale figure with a permanent smile, watching from the dark. Psychologists argued he was a delusional boy hiding in plain sight. Conspiracy theorists claimed he was an experiment gone wrong, escaped from a secret lab. But the truth was simpler and more terrifying. Jeff had shed his humanity. He no longer thought like a boy. He no longer felt pain, guilt, or sorrow. He was hunger and cruelty wrapped in pale skin. And everywhere he went, he left behind the same whisper in the night. Go to sleep. By the end of the year, Jeff's name was no longer just a headline in local papers. It had become a whisper shared in hushed voices across states. Children dared each other to say his name in the dark, while parents threatened misbehaving kids with stories of the boy with the carved smile. But unlike other legends, Jeff was no story. He was real, and he was listening. Every rumor about him seemed to fuel his rage, pushing him to strike again, just to remind the world he was no myth. When one small town in Ohio dismissed him as a hoax, its streets turned red in a single night. A family of 5 was found lifeless, each face mutilated into a permanent grin, carved by the same steady hand. On the wall above them, smeared in blood, was a single message. Do you believe now? Law enforcement dedicated entire task forces to hunt Jeff down. The FBI classified him as one of the most dangerous fugitives in American history, though many agents privately admitted they didn't know if they were chasing a man or a monster. They followed trails of killings, but Jeff always stayed one step ahead. Surveillance cameras caught only fleeting glimpses, a pale shape darting between alleys, or a twisted smile glowing in the reflection of a store window. One detective, Mark Hensley, became obsessed with capturing him. Mark studied every crime scene, every bloody signature, and began to notice something unsettling. Jeff wasn't just killing randomly. He was circling back, visiting towns connected to his childhood. It was as if he was rewriting his own story with blood. In some towns, people swore they had seen Jeff in daylight, disguised under hoodies, makeup, or even masks. Some claimed he had attended local schools for days before disappearing again, blending in just long enough to pick his next victims. A teenage girl in Michigan swore that Jeff had sat next to her in class. She remembered the way his hands shook slightly as he doodled knives into his notebook, the way he stared at her with unblinking eyes. Days later, her entire family vanished, leaving behind nothing but a mirror covered in smeared lipstick words, "Smile with me." Jeff's killings grew bolder. No longer satisfied with quiet entries into bedrooms, he began setting houses on fire, forcing whole neighborhoods to watch in terror as flames consumed their neighbors' homes. Survivors claimed they saw him standing at the edge of the firelight, his grin illuminated by the blaze, knife glinting in his hand. He never ran when spotted. He wanted to be seen. He wanted the fear. One firefighter who escaped the collapse of a burning house reported the last thing he saw before blacking out. Jeff kneeling in the smoke, carving a smile into the victim's face as the flames closed in. By now, Jeff wasn't just a fugitive. He was a legend stitched into nightmares. Internet forums were flooded with supposed sightings, blurry photos, and chilling recordings of late-night whispers caught on baby monitors. Go to sleep. Some insisted Jeff was no longer human, that the fire, bleach, and madness had changed him into something immortal. Others said he fed off fear itself, growing stronger with each terrified scream. A few whispered that killing him was impossible because he wasn't alive in the first place. Parents began locking their children inside at night, yet the killings continued. No one knew where he would strike next. The legend had become unstoppable. Mark Hensley, now hollow-eyed and desperate, finally uncovered something chilling. Old psychiatric records revealed Jeff's obsession with mirrors, his hatred of his own reflection after his transformation. Mark theorized that Jeff lingered in towns with abandoned houses, places where mirrors still hung untouched, because he wanted to confront himself, to admire the monster he had become. One stormy night, following this lead, Mark entered a decrepit farmhouse rumored to be Jeff's latest hiding place. Inside, every mirror was cracked except one. On it, written in smeared blood, were the words, "You found me." The lights went out. Detective Mark Hensley stood frozen in the darkness of the farmhouse. His flashlight flickered weakly, casting jittery beams across the cracked walls. The words on the mirror, "You found me," still dripped fresh. Then a sound, a slow creak on the staircase above him. Mark raised his gun, heart hammering, and whispered into his radio. No response. The storm outside drowned the signal. A shadow descended the stairs, step by step, pale and deliberate. And then he saw it. The grin, the hollow, lidless eyes that had haunted reports for years. Jeff the Killer was no longer a rumor. He was here. Mark fired. The shots echoed through the house, shattering glass. Jeff staggered but didn't fall. Instead, he laughed. A ragged, guttural sound that seemed less human and more beast. "Go to sleep," Jeff whispered, lunging forward. Neighbors reported hearing gunfire and screams from the farmhouse that night. By the time backup arrived, the place was in ruins. Walls slashed with deep knife marks, mirrors shattered, and blood staining the floor. But there were no bodies. Not Jeff's, not Hensley's. Nothing but silence. The FBI closed the case, labeling it unsolved. Hensley's disappearance was chalked up to a tragic end in pursuit of a myth. But agents who stepped into that house swore they felt something unnatural in the air, like the walls themselves were watching. In the years that followed, the legend only grew. Reports poured in from towns hundreds of miles apart, each describing the same figure. Pale skin, black hair, a carved grin, and a knife gleaming in the dark. Some claimed to hear whispers at their window at night. Others found strange words scratched into their mirrors. "Smile with me." And in rare, horrifying cases, families vanished without a trace. Beds still warm, doors still locked from the inside. Every time the last words neighbors reported were the same chilling phrase, "Go to sleep." By now, no one knows if Jeff is still flesh and blood, or if he has become something else entirely. Some say he feeds on fear, never aging, never dying. Others insist he's a curse, passed from victim to victim like a virus of madness. But one truth remains undeniable. Whenever someone dismisses him as just a story, a pale smile appears in the shadows, waiting to prove them wrong. So tonight, as you close this video, lock your doors, draw your curtains, and if by chance you wake in the middle of the night to see a pale figure standing at the foot of your bed, don't scream. Don't move. Don't even breathe. Because if you do, you'll hear him lean close and whisper in your ear, "Go to sleep."